Good morning, everyone. B1 to the family. Good morning, Jermaine Anderson. Thank you for moderating, sir. There's a lot going on in America. And we're going to cover some of these topics, family. I've been on a little trend here this past week, doing more videos than I usually do. And there's been a lot of hot topics I wanted to touch on. And even when we look at Ron DeSatan, or some people might call him Ron DeSatan, I don't know. He has so many different names, but once again, he's starting trouble in his own state. Now he's ousting one of the billion-dollar companies that he has. And just read the amount of jobs that people are going to be without because of his stupidity. Ron DeSatan, 200 Disney employees relocated to Florida before campus was scrapped. Disney cancels plans for $1 billion campus. Sometimes you can just do too much. And I'm glad I don't live in Florida. I have a buddy that lives there. I mean, Texas is not, well, Texas is very different than Florida. And our two governors are different. But in my opinion, they're both white supremacists. It doesn't matter, right? And somebody, why are you just calling out, labeling people, evidence, legislation, bills of that nature? The war in Ukraine is still going on. We're still funding them $1 billion by the month. So nothing has really changed there. Uh-oh, hold up. Where we going? I'm all over the place here, family. Give me a second. All right. I think I'm back in commission here. I don't know what type of glitch that was, but I'm glad we got through it. Now, as I was saying before, there's a lot going on. As we're noticing, the world is upside down. We're going to talk about reparations. We're going to talk about Joe Biden and his commencement speech to Howard University. So without further ado, let's get right into it, family. Let's get right into it. Now, I want for you guys to watch some of this before we get into it. I want you to listen to the words. And prior to that, let me cheat a little bit here, because I had to do a Google search and define what is a commencement speech. And I want you to look at that little National Institute of Health.gov, let you know that's the government website. So it's coming from the federal government. Okay. They should be a unified body, but anyway, it is not about the speaker. It is not about the speaker. It is about the graduates and their guests. The message should be uplifting and should deal with education, wisdom, and the future and what the graduates have accomplished. And a lot of you who graduated from bachelor, you got your bachelor's degree, your undergrad, and you went to and went off and got your master's, you understand commencement speeches. I had people speaking my commencement speeches, and it was always about the road ahead. You guys, blood, sweat, and tears, blah, blah, blah. You worked hard. You got here. You finally did it. And this is what you need to look forward to. One more definition. Graduation speeches serve two important purposes: celebrating everything that came before graduation day and building excitement for everything will come after. Everyone agrees with that? So let's just listen to this part of Joe Biden's commencement speech.
When it's given oxygen, it comes out from under that rock. That's why we know this truth as well. Silence is complicity. It cannot remain silent. We have to live through this battle for the soul of the nation. And it is still a battle for the soul of the nation. What is the soul of the nation?
Yeah, what's the soul of the nation? Not the school.
The soul is the breath, the life, the essence of who we are. The soul makes us us. The soul of America is what makes us unique among all nations. We're the only country founded on an idea, not geography, not religion, not ethnicity, but an idea. The sacred proposition rooted in Scripture and enshrined in the Declaration of Independence that we're all created equal. an image of God.
So this is a commencement speech to motivate the graduates going out into the workforce. And he's made this a political campaign. He's made this a non-responsive town hall. These are political impactful to the psychology of those Howard U grads because they're excited, their endorphins are at a high level, and they're accepting this speech. Because I'm not going to watch too much more of this, family, but people are cheering and clapping, but it was nothing about them. They mentioned black people, he mentioned white supremacy.
To be treated equally throughout our lives. While we've never fully lived up to that promise, we never before fully walked away from it. We know that American history has not always been a fairy tale. From the start, it's been a constant push and pull for more than 240 years between the best of us, the American ideal that we're all created equal, and the worst of us.
Equality, okay.
Reality, that racism has long torn us apart. It's a battle that's never really over. But on the best days, enough of us have the guts and the hearts to stand up for the best in us. To choose love over hate.
Okay, family. I don't want to bore you guys with this bullshit because that is exactly what it is. So let me get down to what most people care the most. It's not the most entertaining, but we have to go there. This is Joe Biden's entire speech and remarks and every word he almost uttered. And this is coming from whitehouse.gov. So this is not my conjecture, my bias, my prejudice. This is what it is. So I've highlighted a couple of things. I want you guys, and of course you can go read it. That's why I always reference my material, okay? So you guys can go read this, but I'm gonna scroll down here to some highlighted parts. And then you guys are going to accuse me that I'm gonna pick pieces out here and there and put them together in creating my own narrative. No, I did pick pieces out. We're all going to piece them together, but you can always go and fact check me. But this is the narrative. Okay. So again, this is the entire commencement speech to Howard University graduates. And I'm just going to read the highlighted parts here. Strong partner in the Caribbean and for addressing climate change and supporting democracy across the Western Hemisphere. We're talking about the Caribbean. We're talking about climate change. Okay. All right. Commencement speech. The first black, I might say, vice president of the United States of America. I can see why he mentioned that. He's at her school. She's Blasian. I don't know. Asian, black. I don't even know what she is sometimes. But she don't act and speak and move and approve legislation like a black woman would. But anyway, I digress. I know. I'm biased. Let me move on. Dr. King was assassinated. So, family, I really want you to see what's going on here. Anytime that these political pundits, doesn't matter what city, county, jurisdiction, state, it doesn't matter. Anytime they talk to black people, first they have to tell you about your pain. Oh, I understand what your people have been going through for a very long time. You know, Dr. King was assassinated. And if you side with Malcolm X, I understand that's one of your leaders too. The dismantle that the CIA and the FBI did with the Black Panther Party. All the secret agents they had within their midst that were looking like you, but they wasn't for black empowerment. Yeah, I understand black people. I understand. And so that's what they do. This is a commencement speech to motivate, inspire these HBCU students to go off and do great things in the world. But no, he uses as a time for him to push his political politics, his campaign, so to speak. Let me move on. Race in America, first black president. So he's naming all of these things. He's naming all of these things. He's basically saying, look how great people you are. But then we're going to get into the legislation of how he has done nothing for us. He just talks to us. right? Oh yeah, I sympathize, I understand, I comprehend. But when Jews came over here, the Holocaust survivors, the American government, Obama and Biden, paid them millions of dollars in reparations. Because if you go read the wording, it was to repair the families of the Holocaust survivors so they can live out their life in dignity. That's reparations. Here we go. Crazed neo-Nazis. Give me 1 second here, family. Crazed neo-Nazis with angry faces came out of the fields with torches, carrying Nazi banners from the woods and fields, chanting the same anti-Semitic blow heard across Europe in the 30s. And he said, accompanied by Klansmen and white supremacists emerging from dark rooms. What type of speech, what type of commencement is this? You're talking about anti-Semitism, that's a term that the Jews use for Jews hate and discrimination. Then you grouped us in with the Klansmen and white supremacists. Why all this being named in a commencement speech? That's because he has a political ploy to psychologically continue for Black people to vote for him. But no one will question him in the Democratic Party about these so-called illegal immigration policies. Prior to some of these states like Texas and Florida, of course, to put in state legislation like, no, we're not giving illegal immigrants IDs. No, we're not allowing illegal immigrants to become police officers. Or, as some people would say, non-citizens or undocumented. No, because you can still come to this country, be undocumented, and not be a citizen and still get a picture ID from the state. So a lot of these states are now cracking down on that. And why do you believe that Joe Biden is allowing thousands, hundreds of thousands of immigrants from Afghan, Ukraine, Mexico, Cuba? Like, because they serve as a buffer class and to replace the Black vote. Once they replace the Black vote, family, the white supremacist society would never have to come to us. The Democratic Party would never have to come to us for a vote. We would be the permanent underclass. And yeah, you may have some friends who are illegal immigrants, but it's not best for us. Let me move on. He said a lot here, but you can go and read it yourself. To choose love over hate, unity over disunion, progress over retreat, to stand up against the poison of white supremacy, as I did, as I did in my inaugural address. Wait a minute. It's not about the speaker when you're talking about commencement addresses and speeches. It's not about the speaker coming from the federal government. But as we're stating, this is all tactical in his political ploy to have the next generation of Black people to vote for him. And I'm not saying this because I'm at a Black HBCU. No, this man didn't. Good old Sleepy Joe. Joe, did you know that the B in HBCU means Black? Because if there's some historically white Black college, some white college university, please let us know. But anyway, shout out to go Joe Biden with the historical Black college universities. I'm sorry. I just can't do it, family. This is atrocious. Now, let's get into what some people will believe, all the Democratic talking points. Not all of them, not inclusive, but onesies and twosies. Listen to this. Protect fundamental rights and freedoms for women to choose and for transgender children to be free. What? This is at a commencement speech for college graduates. This is at a commencement speech to college graduates. So I got a couple of questions for you, family. One, if he was at a white institution, would he have said that? Two, if he was at an Asian institution, would he have said that? Three, if he's at a Hispanic institution, he might slip something in, but not this, because what we're about to go through is not a commencement speech. This is the Democrats continue to try to win the black vote one more time. This is our last time to show unity, organization, and power. This is the last time. Because they're sending all these thousands of immigrants, and you see our brothers and sisters, like they are in Chicago, speak out against it. So let me run down this very quickly. Protect fundamental rights and freedoms for women to choose and for transgender children to be free. Wow. For affordable health care and housing. For the right to raise your family and retire with dignity, to stand with leaders of your generation who give voice to the people demanding action on gun violence. All of these are political points that he's already embedding into the minds of those Howard U grads. To stand against books being banned and Black history being erased. You white supremacist Joe Biden. Wow. I'm scrolling down. I'm keeping my promise. He made it personal again. That no one should be in jail merely because of their use of possessing marijuana. Oh my God. Oh my God. Don't go out and you're going to work for some of the best 504 companies and you're going to fulfill some of those issues and solve some of America's problems. No, this dude talking about marijuana commencement speech. My student debt relief plan. Oh gosh, that didn't get passed and no one debt got relieved. So why even mention it? But he had to mention it so he can say for those on Pell Grants, and he stated this out, 70% of Black college students receive Pell Grants. The new Republican Party is dead. To reduce your debt service payments when you graduate. I got the assault weapons ban passed 30 years ago, and we're going to pass it again. Who is we? But okay, yeah, I think that's about it. I couldn't do no more. After that, I couldn't do any more, family. Because let me tell you something. We often hear politicians making grand promises during campaign rallies, especially around election time. And the Democratic Party has been consistent on obtaining the Black vote each and every time. They have made numerous commitments to the Black community, and has always been squandered away from other groups by them using the term minority and underserved and impoverished communities. And in particular, regarding legislation about reparations. Many of these problems have remained unfulfilled, leaving Black Americans feeling neglected and deceived, as we always have. There's a bill trying to make its way through Congress that it doesn't have any feet. It doesn't have any wings. Picture other legislation that essentially try to get passed that was specifically for Black Americans. Stuff like things that pertain to criminal justice reform or actual affordable housing for foundational Black Americans and these so-called voting rights that we're always fighting for. Those bills have been stalled, stopped. They've been watered down, leaving us without the meaningful change that these Democrats have promised us time and time again. And no, I'm not a Republican. And no, I'm not an independent. I used to be an independent. The one thing, some of the things that we can do to gain insight is reaching out to political analysts, political lobbyists, and see if they'll divulge any of the real information. I'm just kidding. You know they're not going to do that. You know they're not going to do that. But I had to point some of those things out about the Democratic Party because this is what we continue to go through time and time again. So there's been a lot of things on the internet that we covered this last year on this channel that Donald Trump, believe it or not, gave the most money to the HBCUs. I bullshit you not. I'm absolutely not joking. Joe Biden comes to be president, and then he cuts HBCUs $45 billion. And if you go on some of these Democratic, senators, congressmen, state legislators, Twitter page, they're trying to debunk that the people are talking about the money that got cut from HBCUs. That's a lie. That's a farce. He gave so many millions of dollars. This is where the rubber meets the road. Because here we're going to look at the legislation itself. So I know this is just a headline. But believe it or not, he only gave those HBCUs $2 billion. Let's move on. First, we have to understand how it was almost co-opted or being co-opted by Hispanics. So Biden plan pits Hispanic serving colleges against HBCUs. For Latino education groups leveraging their growing representation as part of the politics. And you can scroll through this and read this article, family, of how some of that $2 billion supposedly went to Hispanics. But let's get into it. Symbolism is everything. Because automatically you're thinking, okay, well, here it is. The Biden-Harris administration historic investments and support for historically Black colleges and universities. Is that what the title says? Can anyone confirm? Thank you. It says Black colleges and universities. So what I've done is scroll down here to the money. Historical investments, HBCUs. They talk about the past and they talk about the American Rescue Plan. And then you say, okay, the release have provided nearly $3.7 billion in relief funding to HBCUs this year alone. Okay, so we see the money. We see the debt relief, the education discharge program, $1.6 billion debt from loans provided to HBCUs. Okay, because the one thing we want to find out is the money. You went to these Black colleges, you put on your political campaign, and showing continued support for HBCUs through the Build Back Better Act, which is for everybody. The Build Back Better Act is for everyone, for all Americans. No problem there. Now we get in the nitty-gritty, family. We're looking at the financial support for HBCUs. So I'm just going to call it the BBB provides $10 billion. It provides $10 billion to HBCUs. So automatically, you're like, Ross, you're lying. You said $2 billion. It's saying $10 billion. Oh, did you do the math? This provides $10 billion to HBCUs, tribal colleges and universities, and minority serving institutions. What the title say? Yeah. So the title said historically Black colleges and universities. That's what it said. So now we're giving money to Native Americans, Asians, Hispanics, Afghanis, anyone who's so-called non-white. And let me tell you what a lot of these groups are going to do. If it benefits them, and I'm talking about the ones who are from the Middle East, because according to the American census, people who derive from the Middle East in America are considered to be white. But if being white doesn't benefit a Ukrainian or an Afghan that comes over here, they're going to check other. Why would they check other? Why not just be white and be part of the dominant society? Because they'll try to be white first. Oh, I'm white, so let me go see if I can get a good paying job, get some student loans, whatever the case may be. Well, they said, we don't have enough money in the budget. So they put other. And now they become a minority. There you go. So $10 billion to all these people. Then it states here, right? Capacity building, $6 billion, increasing funding for existing grants. It goes on to say, including by credit, expanding educational programs in high demand fields, of which $2 billion is dedicated specifically for HBCUs. This is a fivefold increase from the amounts that HBCUs typically receive. No. So I told you before, Donald Trump actually gave HBCUs more billions of dollars than what Joe Biden has stated. So when you hear these political people say, oh, no, he gave a lot more than that, well, we're just reading the bill that is offered to the public by the way of the federal government website. All right. So your girl Kamala had to reach out and say something, You made this bison proud. This year at Howard U, graduate, you are our future, and our nation is counting on your leadership. Why did Joe Biden do a commencement speech at Kamala Harris' alma mater? Where was Kamala at? Why didn't she show up? Family. If you don't start connecting the dots here, then you're not going to understand the dynamic of politics. This is very basic. And as long as they got us cheering, you see us, we're googly-eyed, we're smiling, and we don't even know what hit us. But, there has been some people during this commencement speech putting up signs above their hats and papers saying that Biden and Harris don't care about black people, because they don't. And they know that. And I'm glad they took that time to silently protest. You can protest wherever, whenever you want to. It's your right. Then I scrolled down. I saw James E. Clyburn. Oh, boy, this dude right here. Marcel Dixon, District 6, South Carolina. Please put this guy out of office. Marcel Greg Dixon, South Carolina, District 6, Gullah Geechee. Please put this man out of position. Jim Clyburn has done nothing for black people in America or in the state of South Carolina, which is the poorest district in South Carolina, I believe. But he had to put his little 5 cents inside of it. I'm humbled to have received a doctorate of humane letters from Howard U this morning alongside my friend at POTUS. Why? Politics, family. For these Negroes and Coons and Sambos to stay in office in perpetuity until the day that they die. As long as they live in a great life, think about that. Selfish people your whole life. A lot of these black politicians are selfish because they don't have to sacrifice anything to help their own people. Just point it out, family. I was scrolling down here. I think I saw one more thing. The Congressional Black Caucus, family. Can you read this? This is our whole brown black coalition. Now, I really want any of you to prove me wrong. When have you seen a mass majority of Hispanics always speaking about the black community like we do the brown community? Black and brown, black and brown. You never hear them say brown and black. Brown and black, no. Then the Congressional Coon Caucus, the Congressional Black Caucus retweeted the Congressional Hispanic Caucus information. Why? I digress. Let's move along. Are you guys familiar with H.Res.414? This is a bill that Cori Bush, female Cori Bush, black lady, is putting out for reparations. But as I was looking at Tariq Nasheed's broadcast and I went through the legislation myself, there's a tremendous amount of trick language, words that can be co-opted by other groups, things that can be misinterpreted. It's very, very deliberate by her, by the way, to group in these other people. But nonetheless, I'm gonna let you hear some of this interview very, very quickly.
Russell Kinsaw takes a look at the momentum building to provide compensation for the legacy of slavery.
Was decided by a majority.
Missouri Congresswoman Cori Bush announced her reparations resolution along with other members of Congress on the steps of the Capitol.
This is not just a matter of our country's history, but it is a matter for which America must provide reparations if we desire a prosperous future for all.
Bush and others said black Americans face a variety of obstacles today that are the legacy of slavery.
All of this can be traced back to hundreds of years of systemic government-sanctioned racism, emanating from enslaving African people for over 250 years.
Last month, the Reparations Commission, appointed by St. Louis Mayor Tashara Jones, met for the first time. Over the next year, the commission will...
That's what it's about. and we're going to jump into it. H.Res.414, recognizing the United States has a moral and legal obligation to provide reparations for the enslavement of Africans and its lasting harm on the lives of millions of Black people in the United States. So we understand when our ancestors first came over, they were Africans, and then they became Black people. Okay. Because the reason why we're using the word term Black versus African is because, first and foremost, we are generations, upon generations, far removed from our African ancestry. The only way we find out that information if you do 23andMe and ancestry.com. And even that being said, we're looking at the 54 countries in Africa. They never really called themselves their continent, right? They call themselves Ugandan, Kenyans, Nigerians, so on and so forth, right? South Africans, or they even call themselves their tribal names, right? Zulu, Kikiyu, all these different tribes they have. So that's one thing. And so when we label ourselves Black Americans, it's because ever since the 1500s that we can actually prove our people have been on this land. Family, we're talking about hundreds of years, generations that far removed, and we have a different culture. Our culture, unfortunately, derived from slavery. Yours didn't. Yours was colonized within your country, depending on what generation in your family came over. But again, that could be very difficult for some people to understand, and I get it. Right? We kind of read through this already. It's just a long list. Where is it at? I'm just going to show you something. They're going to tell you about everything that we've been through, right? What our people have fought, bled, and died for. But it gets to a point. Give me a second. I don't want to get you guys dizzy over there. It gets to a point where they start actually talking about money. Let me do something very quickly. Stay with me, family. I'll show you very, very quickly here. Now, it states here, whereas the federal government must compensate. Now we're talking about money. The descendants of enslaved Black people, okay, should be the descendants of enslaved Black American people or foundational Black American people or U.S. melanated freedmen or American descendants of Black slaves. But look what it states here. Black people and, okay, that means me and Jerome is going to the store. Jerome go to the store, singular. Me and Jerome, plural. So Black people and people of African descent. Now you're talking about all the different African peoples that are over here. You're talking about the Somalians, the Ethiopians, the Nigerians, the Kenyans, the Ugandans, the Ghanaians, the South Africans, whoever is from African descent over here is grouped inside this bill. Let me take it a step further. Elon Musk is African American. When I went to Cape Town, me and my wife, we went to Cape Town. And somebody say, man, you didn't go to Johannesburg? We're like, man, you know, we didn't have enough days. We're only 8 days or something on vacation. So we picked Cape Town because it was at the tip, the most southwestern point of the African continent, right? And Johannesburg is what? A couple of hours away north flying. So 8% white people. So there's a lot of white South Africans. So you said of African descent. Some of you like, man, that still don't make any sense. No, it does. African descent. What is Africa, family? What is Africa? Africa is a continent. Watch this. Let me help you guys out. Let me break this down even more so. Yeah, and I can't spell, and I don't care. So Morocco is in the continent of Africa. These are African people too, right? Right? Uh-oh. Let me show you. These are African people too, right? These people are African people too, right? Look at the hair, look at the skin, look at the eyes. So no, it can't be and of people of African descent. First of all, we Black Americans ancestors are the ones who went through slavery, not people of African descent. And then look who else can be grouped in the term African descent. People from Morocco. Let me show you. Let me just do this. Sometimes I have a mic right above my keyboard, so I'm struggling. Give me a second. Go back with this. Nope. I didn't spell Africa right or nothing. Let me just go back. Give me a second, family. I'm getting my life together. I'm getting my life together here live. And that is not what I stated. But anyway, let me show you some of the white countries of Africa. And also is labeled the African Arab Emirates. Okay. Let me just do this. Let me just pop up an African map very, very quickly so I can get my countries right. So when we speak about countries like Mishawana, I'm going to butcher some of these names. There's a large population of white people. Morocco, as we stated before, if you look up people of Morocco, damn near look white. Algeria, white. These are not what they call sub-Saharan Africans, where they have dark melanated skin. So these people, their ancestors invaded North Africa and took over. These people are Arabs. They might say I'm Nigerian, but they derive from the Middle East. Okay, like Libya, Egypt. You look at Egyptians, that's not a true Egyptian. If you look at the history books, the hieroglyphics and pictures that they have out of the actual Egyptians and how dark they look, I think the lightest color was a light brown. The lady who's actually playing the part in Cleopatra documentary. So yeah, I mean, I don't want to get into a history lesson, but I just wanted to point that out. People of African descent and people of African descent. And people of African descent. Now, and again, this is off congress.gov. And again, you guys can go read it for yourself. H.Res.414. Recognizing the United States has a moral and legal obligation to provide reparations for the enslavement of Africans and its lasting harm on the lives of millions of Black people in the United States. Okay, they do this a lot, and they think they're witty and slick about doing this. Why didn't you say the enslavement of Black Americans? Why didn't you say the enslavement of U.S. melanated freedmen or Black freedmen? But you said Africans. Then you state lives of millions of Black people in the United States. And some people are like, oh, man, you're just stretching it. I'm not. I'm just reading the words. Because what happens is you'll have other groups, people from the Caribbean, that's now Caribbean American, people from Africa who are now African American. There's been a lot of Kenyans, Nigerians, Ugandans, Zimbabweans, South Africans that came over to America, and now they're African American. So some of you are like, no, man, we all Black. Yes, but we have a different lineage. We have a different culture. Our ancestors had a different experience. They went through slavery in the Caribbean. They need to look to Europe that enslaved them. They got colonized in the different African countries. They need to look to those European countries that colonized them. Like if the Dominicans want reparations, they go to Spain. If the Haitians want reparation, they go to France. They don't come to America, get a job, become a citizen, and now say, oh yeah, I'm Black too, I'm African American, I want reparations too. No, Go back to your country and fight with your people for your reparations. Because CARICOM, yeah, you guys know what CARICOM is, right? This is, it says here, I'll just read it. CARICOM promotes and supports a unified Caribbean community that is inclusive, resilient, competitive, sharing in economic, social, and cultural prosperity. Hats off to CARICOM, unified. But what is CARICOM about? Discussions on the issue of reparations for Native genocide and slavery were initiated at the 34th regular meeting of the Conference Heads of Government, CARICOM, in July 2013. So right off the bat, they tell you that CARICOM is about reparations. So if you derive from the Caribbean, then you should be in the fight with CARICOM. You should be in the political broadening in spectrum of CARICOM to those European countries, but not coming over here trying to be a citizen just so you think you can get reparations. We have a different lineage. Established a more ethical and legal case for the payment of reparations by the governments of all the former colonial powers, all of them, and the relevant institution of those countries to the nations and people of the Caribbean community for the crimes against humanity of native genocide, the transatlantic slave trade, and racialized system of chattel slavery. Hats off to them. Hats off to them. And guess what they're stating? They're being unified in their fight for their reparations that is owed to them from Europe. I applaud that. You don't see a lot of Black Americans sticking our hands in CARICOM like, well, I grew up in the Caribbean, so I deserve reparations too. But let me show you this. It states here are the countries, the national reparation committees have been established in the following member states: Antigua, the Bahamas, Barbados, Belize, Dominica, Guyana, Jamaica, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Lucia, Vincent and Grenada, Suriname, Trinidad, and Tobago. That's damn near the whole Caribbean. And if you notice, with the exception of Dominica, there's some Spanish-speaking countries in here. I think there's Dominica and Guyana. I think they speak a little bit of Spanish. But with the exception of those two countries, family, these are Black countries. These are Black Caribbean countries. What about the state of Africa and their fight for reparations towards their European colonizers? Africa revised push for colonial era reparations. Look at that. So if you are African, go back to your prospective African country if you want reparations. I mean, I know you live over here now, but when they start handing out the checks, just fly back, get your check, and come back. But stop trying to get crowbarred in our reparations claim. Stop that shit. It says for years, Africa's push for reparations for European nations for colonial era wrongs have been piecemeal. Now the continent wants to consolidate ongoing campaigns for reparations. Right? Talk about the transatlantic slave trade. They discuss the issues. Okay. They show a bunch of pictures. Right? Some of you don't think they got any money. Some of them did. Nambia, it's not what they deserve. Excuse me, what they're owed a lot more, but Germany did pay something. This year, Germany agreed to pay Nambia $1.1 billion in reparations for genocide committed during its colonial era occupation of the country. You see what I'm saying? Now, Germany paid Nambia. A lot of people are saying this. It's because we are people within a country. So we're not a nation that was aggrieved. And that's why the Native Americans formed a treaty and they became an independent nation. That's how they got reparations. That's how Germany paid Nambia reparation. But when I look at the different people, I said, Oh yeah, you're just talking about how the Germans paid the Jews reparations to Israel, right? Yeah. So if you're not a nation or a country or both, then how you expect to get reparations? And then I say the same way the Japanese people did when they was in those internment camps. When they paid off Ireland for the deaths of those three iron workers. Oh, and one of the biggest examples I will point them to is the Native Americans. The Native Americans got set aside land that is tax-free. The schools on those reservations are tax-free, and they're paid by your and my tax dollars. I'm not hating on the Native Americans. You get what you got. They essentially took your land. I get it. But what needs to happen in the Black community is that we need reparations similar to the Native Americans. But the only difference will be is a direct cash payment of the initial, and then we can take the ongoing payments just like the Native Americans do each and every month. And don't forget, when you go on a reservation, you don't pay taxes because it's sovereign land, so to speak. Then they build casinos on their reservations, which makes them tax-free, and the federal government don't tax them casinos at all. I want you to think about that. Because somebody, oh, well, they got the Indian Bureau of Affairs. I'm like, we got the Bureau of U.S. Freedmen. They can bring that back. So I don't see the problem. The problem is we keep getting talked out about reparations, or trick language is put into documents for reparations, while some of these countries, they say there's very little progress, but some of these countries have received reparations. Germany also returned some stolen artifacts to Nigeria last month, while Belgium returned the remains of the Democratic Republic of Congo's independence hero, Patrice Lumumba. I forget, I always mess up that guy's name. But yeah, I think that's all that I have right there for you guys. Now, before we end the broadcast, family, Black Americans have been voting for the Democratic Party ever since Martin Luther King went to go visit LBJ, Lyndon B. Johnson, and passed a civil right and helped pass the Civil Rights Act. And we've been voting Democrat ever since. And ever since that time, the Democrats have been talking to Black Americans. That's it. That's what I'm referring to. They only talk to us. They haven't put any legislation that is specifically for us and for our empowerment and betterment. All the bills they so-called said are for us or for every other group in America. But we've seen, the most recent legislation, the anti-hate crime bill for Asians. We've seen economic initiatives for the Hispanic and Asian community. We continue to see all these things occur time and time again, and we be forever left out of any investment within the Black communities. So with that being said, this is Harry Belafonte of what him and King spoke about before he was assassinated. Listen to this.
The last thing Dr. King said to me before he was murdered, Martin said, I sit here deeply concerned that I suspect we're leading our nation on an integration trip that has us integrating into a burning house. Most of the politicians I know of make promises only to walk into the places of power and then deny us.
Did you hear what Harry Belafonte said? I might have to play this one more time. This is very powerful. They make promises only to walk in the place of authority and power and do nothing.
I guess part of the reason I'm here is to really look through the ravages of the Democratic Party and see if anything is really worth salvaging. You know, the last thing Dr. King said to me before he was murdered,
I had to hear one more time.
Martin said, you know, I sit here deeply concerned that I suspect we are leading our nation on an integration trip that has us integrating into a burning house. Most of the politicians I know of make promises only to walk into the places of power and then deny us. I guess part of the reason I'm here is to really look through the ravages of the Democratic Party and see if anything is really worth salvaging.
Family. Good stuff. Good stuff. Well, thank you guys for joining me here this morning. I see Day Jewel Suber. Thank you, sir. Thank you for joining me here this morning. And hopefully you guys something got out of it, but Harry Belafonte said it all. You guys have a great and wonderful Friday. I'm out.